So in possibly one of the biggest pieces of news we've had in a long while, it seems that the restriction on Primaris Marines riding in firstborn vehicles may be a thing of the past. The Warcom article today gives us a very sneaky tease right at the end, but first, before we get to that, there is a whole load of other stuff in the article to cover first. There is a huge swathe of new weapon changes and abilities and updates. So before we talk about the possible transport restriction changes, let's dive into that. First up, there is a load of new abilities and rules being baked into the weapon profiles. Distinctions like assault weapons, heavy weapons or rapid fire weapons are largely gone as a separate distinct weapon type. Instead, as you can see on the bolt rifle example, they now have these abilities just in their profile, and they let the weapon basically do different things depending on how your unit or your model is acting. So as you can see, the bolt rifle is now just 2 shots base and still retains the strength 4 profile with -1 AP. It still hits on 3s, but as an assault weapon, it can now be fired even if the unit has advanced. And similarly, with the heavy rule, they get a bonus when the unit hasn't moved, and this grants it +1 to hit in that shooting phase. So there is no need anymore for 3 different bolt rifle profiles. There is no assault bolter, there is no heavy bolt rifle, there is no normal bolt rifle. It just depends on how your unit is sort of acting as to what special abilities and rules your bolt rifle will benefit from. In general, this just really makes things nice and easy. They've combined everything into one weapon profile, so from a ease of access and quality of life point of view, I think this is a really good change. And it also means that it doesn't matter how you build your intercessors now, whether you put the scopes on or the, assault magazine or whatever, you can just basically build them as you like. And it doesn't really matter because the rules are all baked there into that one profile anyway. It's also worth noting that in the profile they've shown off, there doesn't seem to be the -1 to hit for advancing and firing with the assault rule, and also with the heavy rule, there doesn't seem to be a penalty when you move and fire. Instead, you just get that bonus of +1 to hit when you've chosen to stay still. Another rule that they show off that we saw a few days ago, but we didn't actually know what it did, was the devastating wounds rule on the assault cannon. And this is a rule, like some of the others we've seen recently, interacts with this new idea in 10th edition of critical effects. So a critical hit is when you score an unmodified 6 to hit, and that has, as we've seen previously, got additional effects on some weapons to do an additional hit or to auto wound, that sort of thing. For the assault cannon, they have a rule called devastating wounds, and this procs off of critical wounds. So this is a wound roll that is an unmodified 6, and when that happens, it causes a mortal wound on the target. So normally you would have your 6 shots for the assault cannon hitting on 3s at strength 6, no AP and 1 damage. So you would get, say, 4 hits, and then against a marine you would be wounding on 3s, but any 6s on those wound rolls would just be a mortal wound instead, so the marine wouldn't get a saving throw. So on a normal single assault cannon, this works out to be around 0.66 mortal wounds, so it's not terrifying. It doesn't sound like this is just going to overwhelm the battlefield in mortal wounds all by itself, but stacked up across an entire army with, twin-linked assault cannons on land raiders and a couple in a few Terminator squads, this can add up and stack up over your army and could potentially do a serious amount of mortal wounds into the enemy from these devastating wound style guns. As we have already seen, there was also a big change coming to vehicle toughness, aimed, it seems, at tackling the mid to low range weight of fire way to take down armor. Most weapon profiles, they say, haven't changed much, or indeed have actually just lost some AP rather than got any better, but there are some that are the higher strength anti-tank level guns that have got better, and one of them they show off is the Melter. Now, surprisingly for me, this doesn't seem to get the anti-vehicle rule. I really thought it would, but at least in the preview they've shown off it doesn't. They show off the Melter rifle, so maybe the multi-melter will, but for the Melter rifle, it is 1 shot, it hits on 3s, it has the heavy rule, so if you stay still it will be hitting on 2s, And then it's got a bump to strength 9, so it's going to be wounding like a new Rhino on a 4+, which is quite a big change from the 3s it would be in 9th edition. It's still got -4 AP, and it does d6 damage. The Melter 2 rule that it has means that when you are in half range, it does an extra 2 damage. But what I really like is that they've introduced these rules which are, a word and then a number. So Melter X, for example. And what that means is, in this case, obviously it's Melter 2, but they can change it depending on the different weapons within a squad or on a vehicle or whatever it may be. So a multi-melter, that may well be Melter 3 or Melter 4. A thermal lance on a knight may be Melter 5 or something, It adds a lot of granularity into similar weapon types. And by making it not just a flat rule where melter guns do an additional 2 damage, they do d6 plus 2 damage if they're in half range, making it all very bespoke based on the individual weapon and unit type, really, I think, will help make different weapon types feel more exciting to play, and also, I hope, make things a bit easier to balance if one particular weapon on a particular unit is proving to be a must-take. Rather than just nerfing the Melter rule in general, they can just drop it for that unit down from, say, Melter 3 to Melter 2 or whatever it may be. Not to be left out in all of this, we also got to see a very established Eldari weapon, the Shuriken Cannon. This is still strength 6, -1 AP and 2 damage with 3 attacks, but it has gained the sustained hits 1 rule. And what this does is that when you make an attack, if you score a critical hit, so unlike the assault cannon, this is a critical hit, not a critical wound. So remember, this is going to be an unmodified 6 to hit. If it scores a unmodified 6 on the hit roll, it does an extra hit. So with sustained hits 1, that means with your 3 shots, you could do a potential of 6 hits in total. If you had a weapon that was sustained hits 2, you could instead get a possible 9 hits on the enemy. So again, it just adds a really nice level of granularity and customization between units, and it means that even if they keep the same weapon name, they can change things up. A Shuriken Cannon in a squad of Guardians is going to be sustained hit 1, for example, whereas if you take that Shuriken Cannon on a vehicle, maybe the one in that profile will say sustained hits 2. So they can reuse weapon names without having to clog up loads of pages in a rulebook or a codex with things like Wave Serpent Shuriken Cannon versus Guardian Squad Shuriken Cannon, for instance. And I think in general, it's going to make things so much easier to read and understand, and just so much clearer to players, so they don't have to flick through books over and over again. They just have it all there right and easy to see, and it's going to add so much more fun and variety to the game, and also I think to your list building process. It's also been noticed that the old rule of twin linked is back, and yes, this indeed has made a triumphant return. It seems that the old doubling the number of shots they did from 7th edition to 8th is gone. As you can see, an auto Boltstorm Gauntlet have dropped from 6 shots down to 3, but they've gained that twin linked rule. And what this means is that you can re-roll your wound roll. So for people that play Heresy, this is going to be one you have to watch out for, because twin linked in Heresy is re-roll a hit roll. In 40k 10th edition, it's re-roll a wound roll. So essentially you've gone from 6 shots hitting on 3s at strength 4 to 3 shots hitting on 3s at strength 4 but re-rolling wounds, which is overall a decrease in lethality, which is exactly what GW is aiming for. You may also notice below it the twin-linked Power Fist, and yes, it seems the twin-linked ability can apply to melee weapons as well, so I think things like dual Lightning Claw Terminators will get this rule, and so from that I'm just going to infer, I may be completely wrong, but I'm going to infer that Shred is gone, because the twin-linked rule gives you the reroll wounds, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like Devastating Wounds like on the Assault Cannon on Lightning Claws, to get that sort of old school rending back that they both had back in the day, and which I think means that dual Lightning Claws are going to be a potentially scary way to get some extra mortal wounds into a melee squad of Terminators, which is, again, it's not going to do too many, but potentially could be a way of too many mortal wounds getting brought back into the game, which I don't think is GW's intention, but that could be all wrong. Maybe they will still have shred, I don't know. I just think it kind of overlaps with this new twin link rule, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it gone. Overall, though, it seems that there are still a decent number of ways to reroll, despite what they said in one of their articles the other day. And they did talk about reducing lethality, and yes, a lot of these rules do seem to have reined things in a bit. You know, a lot of strength hasn't gone up, a lot of AP has been reduced, but if every assault cannon or lightning claw level weapon can be dumping out some mortal wounds, and all the stuff that used to be twin linked goes back to it and is now re-rolling all of their wounds, it does seem like the potential for old school leaf blower lists to just wipe everything off the board, that may still be a valid concern to think about, because although I do think things have been decreased in lethality, the rules that accompany the weapon seem to still be very, very good at bringing the kill count for those weapons back up. It's also worth mentioning, because I completely forgot to do it when we were talking about the melter, they also mentioned the Tau railgun has gone up to strength 20. Strength 20? That's kind of insane. Even against things like the Stomper that they said were toughness 14, that's going to be wounding on 3s. That's fairly terrifying. They also said that the railgun isn't the strongest gun in the game, so I imagine things like the Shadow Sword, is it the Shadow Sword? With its big volcano cannon, that's probably going to be even higher still. So there is a lot of very large increased ranges that they're using on the profiles and the weapons, which I do think is a good thing. I think they should expand that rather than the old 1 to 10 system that they were very locked into for, you know, the past 20 odd years. So that's a good change. I just hope they really do use all that granularity to make things feel unique and different. But all of that is all well and good. The final thing in the article today, the very last paragraph, is possibly the most exciting thing I've read since 8th edition came out, and that is a hint, a tease, a tantalizing glimpse at something that may be coming in 10th edition, because they say, and I quote, "Next up, we answer the age-old question, why shouldn't aggressors get to ride in Land Raiders?" Which to me is a very clear sign that GW is telling us they will be able to. And so does that mean all the old restrictions are gone? Will Terminators be able to ride in Repulsors? Will aggressors be in Land Raiders? Will Hellblasters be in Rhinos? How is it going to work? What will the restrictions actually be? And most importantly, am I going to be able to put my Hellblasters in a drop pod now? So there is a lot to ponder from today's article. There is a lot of exciting stuff that has been revealed. And again, I think in general, although there are some things that I'm a little bit concerned about based on them saying rerolls are dropping, but there still seem to be quite a lot of ways to get rerolls. But in general, I still think 10th edition is very, very much heading in the right direction. But as always, let me know what you think. Are these changes good for the game? And do you think there will be any restrictions on what Primaris and Firstborn transports can actually carry going into 10th? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.